Wayne Nelson, across the head of the keyway. Kicks it to Pearce. Loves them out here. Oh, yeah.
Yes, he's hot. No better three-point shooter than Darryl Pearce.
This man, Pearce. Bang. Unbelievable. 3 points. Absolutely unbelievable.
I was 7 and started playing at the under-12s for Brighton Gardens Church of Christ, and basically probably too young to start playing, but shorter numbers and thrown in at the deep end. And my first coach was Scott Davey, a South Adelaide legend and Olympian, so I had a good start. But got to about sort of 8 and 9 and started to show a little bit of talent, and sort of was asked to come out for the South Adelaide under-12 team, the local district club. And again, they were short of numbers. I thought I was hand-picked at the time, being a 9-year-old, but it was short of numbers, I later found out when I was a teenager. And it just progressed from there. I suppose it was just the natural talent of shooting the ball. My dad taught me to shoot the ball religiously, and we practiced it, and I've got to thank him for that, because it created a profession for me. But South Adelaide coach was Michael Armatt, and Michael played 2 Olympics, and he pulled me aside when I was 10 or 11 at a barbecue. You know, I'm only a kid, and said, I think you can be an Olympian. You know, I'm 11. 4 years later, I'm playing senior basketball for South Adelaide in Michael's team. Ken Cole was the coach, so I got looked after pretty well there, and blooded early into seniors, and that was a good learning experience. In those days, Apollo Stadium, the 10 o'clock game, the 4th game, used to be on late replay, black and white, by the way. And it was one of my first ever games. I got on for the last 2 minutes. We're playing Nord, I think, and we were 1 million points up. And they threw the ball to me, and I shot the ball on the buzzer and scored it, my first basket ever. And old Stan Wickham was doing the commentary, and during the week, Brian and David Lester, who were brothers, terrific players that were playing in their team, mentioned to Stan, we call him the Iceman, and that was the time when George Gervin, the Iceman, was at his peak in the NBA, because he's so cool, and they made a bit of a joke about it, and right. And the next game I was on, I made a basket. No, they call him the Iceman, and it became a team joke, and it just stuck, you know, for the next 27 years.
4 points in front. It'll be the Iceman, Darryl Pearce with a shot. That's 3 points.
It started as a gag, but it stuck because Darryl's on-court demeanour really suited that nickname. And so pretty soon he was just being called that by virtually everybody, Iceman, because he was so cool on the floor. But it actually started off as a gag for a rookie.
That's 25 points now to the Iceman, Darryl Pearce.
In 1979, when the league started, I mean, I reckon I probably could have made some teams off the bench. And the club that I played for at the time, South Adelaide, didn't have the money and were not involved. So I didn't start till 82, so I probably missed 2 or 3 seasons because of a money issue. But that's probably not a bad thing.
1982, I think towards the beginning of the season, the Basketball Association of South Australia jumped in and threw out the concept of a composite team. So West Adelaide competed in its own right in the National League, and the other 8 formed under the banner of Adelaide City. And that was really the birth of the Adelaide 36ers right there, because that was the composite team. It was only called Adelaide City Eagles as as a tip of the cap to Forestville pulling out. And it was only a matter of time before I came up with a better name, a more imaginative name, like the 36ers.
They're the days when it was a club, and the Australians didn't get paid, and it was club, and probably 600 people went to a game if you're lucky, and you knew all the spectators and they knew you. And you'd play on a Saturday night, and then the same stadium at Apollo, the next day, West Adelaide would play that team, and they'd have a bit bigger crowd. And then in 84, we had a reasonably good year. I think 84 I averaged good points, but the system suited my game. I had a lot of shots and played a lot of minutes. So, and then some genius brought a 3-point line in during that period of time, and what a bonus that was.
To sort of make the Australian team in 85 and then World Championships 86, 87, play a bit more time in the national team, and then be a consistent contributor, and you're in it, you've been in it, but 88 still had to be a good year. Couldn't have a bad year and still go to the Olympics. I was still very lean and limited. I could shoot it just as well as anyone else, but probably couldn't guard my lunch, and at the other end I was being picked off as an easy isolation target. So, and that was probably one of the things that stopped me going to the national team for not making it earlier. It's just defensively, I mean, you're not expected to get 26 points a game playing for Australia. Stop your man and get 6 and 8 for us if you can.
The Iceman. Yeah, look, Darryl was perhaps the first Australian player that had tremendous range, could shoot from a long way out.
But generally speaking, he was this great 3-point shooter from the outside. He could kill you from the outside, or he could drive past you, and very underestimated, but he was a great passer of the ball.
What a pass to Davis. 2 points. Mark it down to Darryl Pearce. Nice give and go. Oh, how about that for a pass from Pearce? Oh, look at the pass. Oh, look at the great pass from Darryl Pearce to our green.
In 1985, it had become just too difficult for West Adelaide to continue to compete alone as a club, especially when on the other side of the ledger, the Adelaide 36ers, as they were already known, comprises 7 or 8 other South Australian local clubs. So at that point, West Adelaide came into the merger. Ken Cole was coaching West Adelaide at the time. He became the coach of the new combined single-team Adelaide 36ers, and Darryl Pearce really was the only starter from the previous Adelaide 36ers group.
So the concept was fantastic, and more West Adelaide players, they had more depth, and more of those players made the team. I made the team, and I thought it was a great concept. A lot of guys missed out on playing NBL for a while, but the merger team was virtually a state team. And, you know, we've gone from playing in front of 400 or 600 people to packed houses game one. And I remember walking in for the first game, and I was as nervous as a kid, and I thought, this is unbelievable. You know, I've come to the wrong place. This is a rock concert or something. And it was quite eerie to play in front of a crowd like that in that gym. And it took me a couple of games to get used to that.
The overall big figure was Ken Cole, without question. I mean, we had some people that could have had some ego problems. But, you know, Kenny's ego was bigger than the whole team's. I thought he was the perfect coach for the team and for the time.
Don't foul those shooters. They're not good enough to foul. Just go up in front and get to the board. Make sure we own the board.
Me and Darryl had a problem, right? Because Darryl was the man, and this is an 85 I'm talking about. Now I'm coming in his show because he's with the 36ers, really. And I'm a Westies man, and we always had that animosity. And over the first year, Ken was so great with us and said, yo, you two knuckleheads, but to put this thing aside and start winning, you know, start winning as a team with each other, because we can't do it without you two. Right? And me and Darryl became the best of friends. You know, we're not hangout partners, and we all go out, you know, like the brothers are hanging out together, but it was cool. I mean, Darryl was the funniest guy on the team. He was great, and we got along well, you know, but it took time for us to blend as a unit, me and him, because we just had that competitiveness early in our careers.
For a team in its infancy as a group, you know, to make the grand final in its first year was awesome. And at the time, we didn't think it was awesome. We just, well, we were a good team, and we were running over teams, and there was a very healthy rivalry between ourselves and Brisbane. And then to go up to Brisbane in one game, play up at Chandler Stadium, the Brisbane crowd were going absolutely crackers. They beat us, they whooped us in that game. It was embarrassing.
Remember the hurt that everyone's feeling now, and let's just take that on to the next season. And, you know, let's make sure that we don't have the same hurt that we're feeling now, you know, later on down the track.
The difference between that team and the 86 was probably the losing experience was good, and we clearly knew that we didn't want to experience that again.
In 86, when they won, they were almost invincible, and they were just athletic, and they just ran over the top of you. They just had so many guns.
We were hot. We were the hottest ticket in town, and we were the hottest ticket probably going around Australia.
I guess the beauty of playing in that 86 championship was that you got a chance to play against the same team that actually beat you out in 85 that you thought you could have won. And as a competitor, if that's not enough to motivate you, then you got a problem.
I don't think we, for one moment, ever thought we were going to lose that game one. We just turned up, did our business, and, you know, just pillage, plunder, and boom, we're out. And what a plus playing the first time of 3 games, being 1 up away, and in that system you're coming back playing 2 and 3. There ain't going to be a 3, you know, it was bang, it was just very workmanlike. History shows there was a game 3, but, you know, and to their credit, they were deflated in the loss, but they bounced back and got us at home. And it's something that then we were shocked about, and we're on the back foot under pressure.
We ready, we home, put the champagne on ice, we ready to party. Friday night, we hanging out the whole weekend. Shoot, you know, count your chickens before they hatch? Wasn't happening.
We're at home now, and we can play, but Brisbane kind of surprised us and shocked us a little bit, and they came with their game face, and they just played just that little bit better than us in that game too. So I guess we had to do a little bit of soul searching.
All of a sudden, we're coming up on this Sunday game, a few bumps and bruises and a bit sore and dented egos, and we're on the back foot, and yet we're playing at home.
and it was a territory we hadn't been in before. It was quite eerie, and Ken got us together and talked to us, and there was no pump-up, rah-rah session. He just told the truth to us, and we went to that game in the minibus internally so fired up, it was going to be nasty. You know, I wouldn't want to be in Brisbane. We're going to win.
Pearce is in for a shot, and he makes it. You can start celebrating, Adelaideans, because the National Basketball League title is here to stay.
By winning in '86 was very fitting. When you go 24-2, you would expect to win a grand final, and it certainly wasn't easy, and it wasn't in the plan to go 3 games, but you couldn't have written a better script.
Darryl's a great shooter. I mean, the thing with he could make three-pointers like they were layups. He had tremendous range. Now Darryl had great touch. He could hit any side, any range shot. He was shooting NBA threes, but he could hit the 12, 14-foot shot, and he could bank it. And when you see that in a player, you know that player is a shooter. He can really shoot. And he was a good scorer. He wasn't just a shooter. You know, a lot of people are decent shooters, but they're not good scorers. Darryl was a good shooter, but he was a good scorer.
Always had a great sense of humor. He probably was one of the funniest guys I played with in my whole career of playing basketball.
Some rare archival footage there of South Australian basketball, and it was 17 years ago next week when Darryl Pearce hit 11 threes from 14 attempts in a game against Newcastle, and only Shane Hill with 12 and Ian Davis with 13 have hit more threes in a match in the NBL. And we'll continue our Heroes of the Hardwood feature on the Iceman Darryl Pearce right after this.
I think Darryl felt more comfortable not handling the ball. He can handle it, but, you know, he's a great shooter. Get the ball out of his hand, come off a screen, set a screen, and he come off that wide-open shot, he's going to hit it.
It's Pearce fair dinkum. He could throw it out of the dressing room, Pearce, it'd go in tonight.
And I've seen him have some great shooting games. But years ago, when we played Newcastle in Newcastle, he got into a zone that I have not seen that match too often in the NBL.
I remember in that game, and there's a lot of hoo-ha in the papers, and Pearce gets 48. When we played, that was always a shooter's gym. Whether it was the dark floor or the closed-in stands or whatever, it just seemed to be a smaller court, and the rings certainly seemed a little bit bigger than normal. I just felt really comfortable shooting in that place. It's a good gym, and that particular night, you know, I just started to accumulate points, just boom, 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 got in the zone. And if anyone that's played basketball gets in the zone and they get hot, I mean, there are a few feelings that are better than that. You really start getting it quite arrogant, demanding the ball, and you know, when you've got 3 or 4 opponents in a night, you get to the stage where I don't care who it is. I mean, it's a night where I reckon I could have kicked it and it would have gone in.
Good heavens, he runs for the Premier of Adelaide. He gets it, I'd say. This bloke, Pearce, he's red hot.
Given the opportunities, Darryl was one of the great players in Australian basketball. You know, from the 36ers point of view, he was an icon, along with Mark Davis. And, you know, certainly when you came to play against Adelaide, Darryl was the player that you knew if you could stop Darryl from scoring, then you had a big chance of winning the game. But he was very difficult to stop. So because of that range, and he had, you know, had good size and strength, and he was a good athlete. Bow-legged, but he was a good athlete.
Darryl taught me certain things. You know, Darryl was and, you know, will still be remembered as one of the premier shooters of the league. So to be able to train and work with him on that side of my game, you know, it was an absolute benefit for me.
My last year in '91, I was off the bench, and to my credit, I mean, I felt like I was 6th man of the year. I certainly didn't win that, but I slotted into that little cameo role very well and packed in as much enthusiasm and positiveness as I could. I was only 31 or 30, but I was clearly being phased out of Adelaide. So when I was cut at the end of '91, it wasn't a surprise to me, albeit very upsetting, because at that stage I was the longest serving player. But that's just a little bit naive too, to think that you're going to play there forever and maybe coach and it's all a lovely merry-go-round. It's not, it's a business, and me being there didn't suit the coach, so I moved on.
I felt for the team point of view, we had to make a change in that situation. We also had Brett Maher coming from the Institute, so I had to cut somebody. Now, I could either sit a Brett Maher on the bench and not give him any time, or I could make the decision and say, for the future, I think this Brett Maher is going to be something a little special, and maybe it's time for Darryl to look to play a few years elsewhere.
Darryl Pearce was one of the club's great players, and who will be remembered that way. But towards the end of his time with the 36ers, I think there was a bit of a youth movement happening, and he probably bought an extra year when Scott Nennis decided to leave and go and play in Victoria with the Spectres. But the writing was a bit on the wall for Darryl. But I mean, he'd been a great player, and people remember him for his three-point shooting, but he was also one of the best passers. And if you look through the media guide, you'll find there in assists, he's right up there in assists, which is why an element of his game that was underrated, which is why I consider him to be a far better player than most people recall, because he could hit the open man.
I rang Bruce Palmer at North Melbourne and said, look, I'm thinking of taking Darryl out of the team. Now, I know you need a scorer and a shooter. Are you interested in him?
I was happy to hear it, and I inquired about if there was any problems, chemistry problems, and he assured me there weren't. And Don gave Darryl a glowing referral, so we jumped on that.
For most of my career at Adelaide, it was the same thing. It was I worked for the bank, and always had a 9-to-5 job, and then hop into the car, rocket down to Apollo Stadium, and stretch, tape up, and training was from 6 till 8 every night, and that was the commitment. And that wasn't a big effort. I mean, that's what I'd been doing for years. And then when I moved to North Melbourne Giants, Bruce would sort of say, OK, well, we'll see you at Albert Park for individuals, and here's a schedule. And I'd turn to someone and say, what's an individual? Tapes, go and view this guy. This is who you're guarding next week. Scouting tape, 5-page, with Bruce Palmer, 5-page scouting report on every player. It was quite funny too to read some of his derogatory comments about players. He's very humorous. But the serious side of it was just a new step in professionalism.
A tremendous sense of humour. Intelligent basketball player, sensitive to his teammates' needs, kind of guy that would do whatever it took to make the guy next to him, his teammate, look better.
So my first season away was Adelaide's first season in the powerhouse, and my first game as a North Melbourne Giant was against Adelaide, game 1, the first ever NBL game, And I know during the lead up to that game, Bruce Palmer said, are you okay? You're fine, it's your old team. I said, I'm fine, mate, I'm a professional, don't worry about it. And I was really cool. And then I got to the game and I was just a shell. Shocking. Coming back to play Adelaide after that was never a problem. Played reasonably well. And typical Adelaide, always got a good ovation when they call the teams out. If you're from Adelaide and you've left on good terms, they love you. The minute the buzzer goes and the game starts, if you miss a shot or throw a bad pass, they'll laugh at you and hoot you. But there is a respect there.
In my case, as a point guard, he was one of those guys you just love to play. You just love to play with, because when you kick it to him, it's down. It's pretty much down, and I used to just love to, because he was pretty much instant offense. Like he's coming in the game to score.
I had Brett for 3 years, and they were all pretty enjoyable. And he showed other aspects of the game that I thought were really intriguing, and I hadn't thought about, and it was something new and different. So the enthusiasm was still there, and that was the first year with Brett. But after that year, end of '93, basically my contract was up. And he took me aside at a team function, just said, sayonara, you're not required, I'm going with a younger group. And then right at the end, not far before the start of pre-season training, I need you. I don't know what happened, whether someone didn't work out or whatever, but I need you, and they signed me for 1 year. So I got a reprieve, and that was our championship year, and there was no money left in the cap, and I played for minimum contract.
There were times where he probably didn't get to play as many minutes as he liked, having been a senior player that had played exceptionally well at this level, but he didn't complain and I guess just took it on the chin. And next training session, which would be the Monday, he'd come out all guns firing just to show Brett Brown, the coach, that he should have played more minutes. But yeah, he was exceptional those 2 years we had him.
In that year, you got Mark Leader, Fats as the captain, Larry Sangstock and myself. We're all 34 years of age. We're older than the coach. And I think Brett handled that very well.
Anytime somebody cuts you, I don't care what you say, anytime somebody cuts you, you want to beat them. Then you get an opportunity to play them in the grand final. You definitely want to kind of beat them, rub it in their face.
We were better than Adelaide during the season, but at the finals, they were playing very well. So it was pretty even Steven. So we were coming up against a team that was running into form, and we'd been consistent the whole year. So it was a bit of a hard one to pick on form. But it wasn't really the same as if I'd beaten Adelaide in my first year away. It was just another opponent.
to play in the grand final series and, you know, getting game 1 in Adelaide, getting that was a big win for us.
So it's come down to the last shot again. He's got to go, he's got to go! McDonald's. He wants to draw the foul. Goes the shot. Makes it! Makes it! What a shot! And the game is over. McDonald has won the game for North Melbourne on the buzzer in the first period of overtime.
The team that was too old, too slow won it. And, you know, that meant more to me at 34 than what the 86 championship did, because in 86 I was going to have 10 of them, which didn't eventuate. But in 94, probably I was going to play the next year, and it's so much more precious because, you know, you're on the back nine of your career and there might not be another chance to play.
Up shot, and Darryl Pearce, who won a ring for Adelaide in 86, has rubbed salt into the wound. The fairy tale is now complete. North Melbourne are the champions in season 94. What a Cinderella story.
To be part of that team with great chemistry, and if you look at it athletically and all that sort of stuff and X's and O's, that team probably shouldn't have, on talent, shouldn't have won the championship. But the history books say that we did, and we're not giving our rings back. And in hindsight, probably that being the last year, I wasn't in control of retiring. Brett just said, no, I'm not going with you. And whilst that was disappointing at the time, in hindsight, it's probably the best time to go. 95 was still fun. We made the grand final. We got spanked on national television by Perth, which was disappointing. And it was a very emotional change room at the end of the game because I was retiring, Mark Leader was retiring, Chris Jett was going back to the States, and we didn't know what the future held for a lot of guys contractually, and there were quite a few tears in the change room, seeing grown guys really quite emotional. And it would have been good to go out and win, but history shows. But again, it was a great group of guys and good chemistry. My greatest experience would be an opening ceremony at the Olympics. I just was so proud and it was just awesome. But second to that, in pride and nerves, was carrying the torch, and I was quite blasé in the lead up to it. Yeah, fair enough, you know. And I was running in Stirling in the Adelaide Hills and the main street, and it was only 500 metres. But I was that nervous to get, when the guy came down to touch my torch and light the flame, and I took a deep breath, and I think I ran the 500 metres without breathing. I rang my parents and said, I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame, and, oh, that's good, son, you know, they're pretty laid-back sort of people, but, you know, without them I wouldn't have had my basketball career. And it's funny, until I left Adelaide, I was 31, I think either both or one or both of my parents had seen every game of basketball I'd played in my life, bar one, and my dad had a heart attack and he was in hospital, couldn't make the game, but he watched it on television. So I had the support of my folks driving me and supporting me and financially supporting me going overseas and stuff like that. So for their son to make the Hall of Fame, I'm sure they were very proud. And I'd like to think that it's the most elite group that you can have. And obviously it's going to grow over time, but very proud to be inducted and to be voted by the panel. And it's not something you sit back and you hope you're in and you think about and you focus about, because your career's over. When you retire, you've just got the memories. I got a lovely phone call from Barry Barnes a couple of days after that saying how proud he was of me, joining him in the Hall of Fame, and how he believed, you know, you deserved your induction, and it is an elite group and we want it to stay that way. It means a lot to him. And then even more so after talking to Barry about that, who's a good friend and he was in the Australian team at the same time with me, I think more of it just by listening to him talking. And I don't take that lightly, and I was pretty blasé on the way to the function, but getting ready for it and turning up, I was very nervous, and it hit me at how important it was, or what a proud achievement it was. And it's good that the NBL's done that for the tradition of the league, because we've come a long way in 20 odd years. Yeah, it's a pretty special thing.
A great trip down memory lane there with Darryl Pearce and heroes of the Hardwood, and having looked through the history books earlier this week, that 1994 season is without doubt the tightest ever in NBL history. Steve, we're talking about this season being very tight, but in 94, the top 5 teams were separated by 1 game. We had overtime in the quarterfinals, and as we saw there, overtime in the grand final. What a great series, and what a way for Darryl Pearce to go out there winning a championship against Adelaide.
Yeah, it sure was, and that was the first year Darryl McDonald was in the league, and that team, the North Melbourne Giants, nobody expected them to do anything in the preseason, and they had a great season throughout the year, ran ran that 1-3-1 trapping defense. Everybody thought it was a gimmick. Nobody could score against it. They just did a great job, and they just overachieved. Everybody felt like they didn't have the talent to win a championship, and it was just fitting that a team like that, I say a team like that, went out and won it, because there were teams that had better individuals.
And Darryl Pearce still has his name in the record books. His 48 points is still the best ever by an Adelaide player. No doubt that will be broken at some stage, but just one of the great true heroes of the Hardwood.